Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good morning, Divij. Good morning, Chandan.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
And a very warm welcome to our audience today. I know it's a Saturday morning, and I really appreciate you all joining us this morning. I'm Shivani. I head the marketing team at Coditas, and I will be your host for today's webinar on how to kickstart your career in UX design. As the speakers, we have with us Chandan Mishra, who is a partner and director of UX design at Coditas. And along with him, we have Divij Deswal, who's a UX design trainer at Coditas. For those of you who don't know Coditas, we are a UX focused software engineering company based in Pune. We help product companies across the globe in building and running cutting edge digital business models, and we feel extremely proud that we are now a certified great place to work. To know us better and for some amazing content, do follow us on our social media channels. We are very active on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also, do subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you are notified about our next webinar. Now, a final note before we start the webinar: there will be two question and answer sessions, one halfway and one towards the end. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat section. Chandan and Divij, over to you now.
Oh, sure. So we will go alphabetically, Divij. So I'll go first. I'll take the advantage there.
Yeah,
All right, awesome, cool. Yeah, nice to see all of you here, guys. I'm always very excited to get an opportunity to reach out to such a large audience. We had hundreds of registrations. I was very happy to see the numbers there. But yeah, I think I'll just quickly get into my introduction. So my full name is Chandan Mishra. As Shivani mentioned, I am one of the partners at Coditas, and I also am the director of UX design. What that essentially means is that my primary responsibility is to work with the UX design team, work with clients, set up the practices, wherever I can basically help, my team, and I'll also contribute to the overall growth of the team. We have certain different programs that we keep utilizing. We are hiding in big numbers as well. Some of you may have been following us since a long time. Our brand has become more and more strong over the last few years. All credit goes to Shivani and her team. We are based out of Pune primarily, but we do have a small office in Mumbai. We are in the process of setting up one office in Bangalore. Hopefully, we'll have that out of our way soon. We are, apart from that, we have offices in Dubai. We have an office in US as well. So we are trying to establish a footprint as deeply as we can. My background is in computer science, so I moved from computer science to UX around a decade ago. I ran my small startup before merging with Coditas in 2015, and that's when I got into the role that I am in right now. Since then, I've been primarily looking into growing the design practice, as I just mentioned, and UX strategy up to some extent. I've been here for close to 7 years now, and I am honored to be here. And I'm looking forward to sharing all that we know, and also talk about our own, the design training program that we have put together, that we have in motion since last 1 year, and we have achieved great success with that. Thank you so much, Divij. Do you want to take over?
yes. So, hi everyone. My name is Divij, and as Shivani already told that I'm a UX design trainer at Coditas. So primarily, I'm into teaching the learners, um, telling them how UX works, how design research are differentiated, and so on. I've worked with universities before, worked with bachelor's and master's design students. Before that, I was also a computer science engineer, so I've also switched from that to design. And we see lots of people switching from architecture, from computer science, from other streams also. And I've done my master's in design from NIFT Mumbai, and before that, I've done my BTech. So yeah, that is about me. Back to you, Divij.
Excellent. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it is very interesting to see how people have been moving from different disciplines to UX. And the beauty of UX in general is it's basically a combination of a lot of disciplines. So, whatever background that you have, all you need is the willingness to learn, and you can definitely pick things up. Initially, of course,
Right.
things are a little harder than the other fields, but as and when you pick things, it gets better and better. All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Divij, for the full introduction. Guys, I'll just start sharing my screen. And we have the small PPT which we plan on using. I hope the PPT is visible.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, awesome. Awesome. So I'll get into full screen. All right, guys. So I think introductions are already done, so I'll just quickly move. So I'll spend a minute to basically talk about who we are, slightly elaborate further than what Shivani just mentioned, right? So what we are is basically a team, and we have been a team since a long time. What that means is that each and every department within Coditas, they coordinate and communicate with each other in a very transparent way. Each and every one is responsible for the other verticals growth. We believe in high quality deliverables, so and of course that is directly tied to the customer success and customer happiness. So we make sure that all the clients that we work with, they are getting the best bang for their buck. And we at the same time as a team are putting whatever efforts that we can, and wherever possible go beyond our call of duty to deliver the best quality experience to all of our customers as we can, right? So that is how we have grown. I remember when I had joined, we were around 25-30 people, and we are now 900. So I think hopefully if the way things are going over the next couple of months, we'll be touching 1,000 soon. We have built hundreds and hundreds of softwares, um, and of course variety of softwares, so from B2B to B2C. To I personally have done a lot of unconventional experiences as well. For example, designing something for a kiosk, installed at a shopping mall, for example, right? So we have dealt with a variety of problems, and what that has done is that has given us the opportunity to get the exposure that is required to fully understand how software products in general touch the lives of human beings, right? In this session today, we will primarily be covering three agenda points. We will start with a very small but quick discussion on what UX design is, and where exactly interaction design fits in. And that is basically done to make sure that we have a common understanding of the way we look at design processes, or the impact of UX in general. And whatever discussion that we will have after that is going to be tied to this particular topic. We will then move to having a quick discussion on how UX design can benefit you as a good career option. Of course, I've seen over a period of time, I've seen a lot of people moving to UX design because somebody told them, you can do it. It is simpler than coding. It is, I don't know, simpler than architecture or whatever it is. Um, uh, as in on this, and that is the beauty of design in general, right? So the simpler it is for you to look and understand, the more complex the process was, the more complex the execution was. The whole need of design is to make sure that you as a human being, when you are interacting with the product, be it a software product or be it a physical product, or service design, your experience going to a railway station or a shopping mall, or whatever it is, right? The whole fundamental of UX design is to make sure that people who are going to be interacting with the experience, they are going to find it simple to use, right? And as I don't know who said it, but there's a very common saying that says, ultimate sophistication is in simplicity, right? So that is how UX design in general functions. Absolutely, I would say very fun career to be in. You deal with a lot of challenges, a lot of creativity involved, a lot of science involved, and how you combine all of those things to come up with something which is ultimately going to help a human being sitting on the other side of the world is very fascinating. Then we will move to the last topic, which will be our own in-house UX and interaction design training program. So we have put together a small infrastructure where every quarter we take in certain number of people, and we train them in UX fundamentals, and the entire curriculum is based out of what we do as a design team. So we don't expose you to the entire umbrella of UX. We don't promise you that you'll become master of UX after after those 3 months of training. The curriculum is specifically designed around what we do day in and day out as a team, and certain pieces are paid more attention, and certain pieces are slightly sidetracked depending on the depth of it and the practical usability of some of those fundamentals. So Divij is going to get into details of some of them. So yeah, first thing first, basics of UX design. So somehow this misconception has been there since a long time, where people talk about different disciplines of UX in isolation, right? So for example, you may have heard a lot of people saying, I am a UX designer. Somebody will say, you know what, I am an interaction designer or a visual designer, and all those things. Even so they are right, they are not wrong. But the way we communicate, and a lot of time when somebody who does not belong to the design community from the beginning, they get confused, because then they start looking at a kind of a disconnect between UX and other disciplines. But what actually happens is, as you can see on the right side, this diagram here, this big brown circle talks about how different disciplines are brought together to ultimately help you as a designer come up with a good user experience, right? So as you can see, this yellow circle is the interaction design bit. You will see a lot of other disciplines. You'll see motion design, see communication design, information architecture, guidance systems, applications. So definitely lots and lots of things. Of course, computer science. So this is where I think Divij and I have benefited a lot. So you'll see software development here as well. So wonderful. I think Shivani will be rolling this out after the webinar, or we'll try to see if we can share some of these resources after the session. But I would appreciate, and I would recommend everyone to just spend some thought observing this particular diagram and some of these in individual activities and practices, for you to be able to get a better understanding of what exactly is user experience and where exactly the other disciplines they sit. At the end of the day, say for example, when we talk about let's just say WhatsApp, right? That is one of my favorite examples, because I still feel WhatsApp is still at the beginning of the real value that it can provide, and hopefully over a period of time it's going to it's really going to blow up. When you talk about WhatsApp, when you open it, when you start communicating with people, people who have used SMS to communicate in the past would probably appreciate the solution that WhatsApp or platforms like WhatsApp have provided now. But when you start interacting with the product, what you see is that, say if you want to send a message to somebody, you will probably look for their name, you will tap on their profile picture or something, and then the interface will open up, and then there's keyboard that's going to come up. You're going to type something and send. So what is happening is there are two aspects at play at the same time there. One is, of course, the entire design team, the user experience team, which was responsible for visualizing, conceptualizing all of this. And of course, a very huge part was played by the development teams, QA teams, n number of different teams, which are in general, a part of a very complex execution of software development, right? So when we talk about UX, it is not really the sole responsibility of you as a designer or anybody as a designer. A good UX comes out of the entire product team's contribution. And that is how we function at Coditas. Each and every designer, each and every design team is deeply integrated to the product teams. And when we operate as a whole, right? So as a designer, we provide certain types of skill sets, certain types of artifacts, and certain types of deliverables. But at the end of the day, a good user experience is the responsibility of the entire product team, right? So that is a mindset that I see a lot of time missing from a lot of new designers that I talk to. They operate in an isolation, which is not really the case. Like, even if you are going to be working as a freelancer, there will always be a larger team that you will be contributing to, unless of course you're the one who's designing and developing and consuming. So it's basically one man show. Those instances are not very common, but most likely you will be in an environment where you will be exposed to a larger function of software development. Software development, again, just a disclaimer, development is just one aspect of the final delivery of user experience. There are other disciplines as well. There's service design, there's customer experience design, where you may have different distributed UX teams working on different products, and they all come together to provide a value to the end users. People who have shopped at Walmart or even DMart or some of these large retail stores, you may know that you can go to the shopping, say for example DMart, right? You can go to DMart to shop something. At the same time, they have a application, a software as well, which you can use to order from the same place, right? At the end of the day, your goal of purchasing something is getting fulfilled. Either you go to the store or the store comes to you. Your goal of buying or purchasing whatever you wanted to purchase is getting fulfilled. So that belongs to more of a service design, more of a customer experience design vertical. So when we get into interaction design, so as you can see here, this yellow circle here is what interaction design is. So we will not get into the depth of other disciplines in this session. I just wanted to make sure that the user experience designs understanding is common, and all of us can visualize. We have a mental image of how exactly this entire umbrella looks. And now we will get into the interaction design. So all of these topics are covered in depth during our training program. As I said, Divij is going to expand on that later. But I've been just trying to make sure that I have the definitions out of our way so that you guys are not confused of what exactly we are talking about. Even if you are, it's absolutely fine. Like, for example, I would be shameless to in admitting some of the design fundamentals. It took years for me to understand. Now when I've understood them, I realized, oh, such a simple and stupid concept. I don't know why it took so much time for me to understand. And so it is absolutely okay if you don't get any of these keywords at this point in time. You can reach out to us. You can follow us over social media. We keep on publishing a lot of content. You can reach out to me, Divij, whenever you want. So this session is going to be focused on very few things that we have decided, right? So when we talk about interaction design, there are generally 5 different dimensions or fundamentals within the interaction design umbrella. So first thing is, of course, the words. But by words, what I mean is, say, people who have used LinkedIn or Medium or any of these websites. And the reason I'm taking these examples is because they are very text heavy, but it is applicable to any kind of software experience. So when, say for example, when you go to medium.com, what you see is basically a lot of text there. Like, you will see a button where there'll be a label. You will see, I don't know, you will see a profile picture where you'll see your name, right? So text kind of consumes a huge part of each and every software experience that we deal with, right? They are probably one of the least understood fundamentals of design. Typography is a connected discipline. Of course, UX writing in general is also a part of it. So I mean, they are not as words and typography, even though they kind of go in hand in hand. But again, just another recommendation that I'll give to you guys is, whenever possible, dive a little deeper into fundamentals of typography. Understand how different typefaces work, the difference between a typeface and a font. How you can use visual weight when it comes to typography. And a larger discipline will be UX copywriting. Over the last few years, I think UX copywriting has picked up very heavily. And the more we also have our own team of UX writers. We've been working with a lot of clients to we kind of integrated the UX writing team to the design process itself, so they have been contributing to a lot of experiences that we are pushing out. So whenever possible, just do a quick read up on that. You'll understand the importance of UX writing in general. Then we have visual representation. So these are basically the composition of the interface. Say you open up a website, you'll see a heading, you'll see a, I don't know, let's just say an image or an icon which is going to allow you to go somewhere, or is trying to communicate something to you, right? So all of those combination is basically the visual representation within the interaction design umbrella. Then we have objects and spaces. Again, a very I find it surprising to see how a lot of us don't really pay a lot of attention to objects and spaces. But what that essentially means is how, so for example, if you're designing a software application which is going to be running inside a browser on a desktop computer, the chances are the users are going to use an external mouse, right? Something, or say a trackpad or something, right? So they will not be touching the interface. They'll not be touching the screens of the laptop. Of course, there are touchscreen laptops instead, but majority of the cases they'll not be touching the screen. They'll be using an external device to interact with the experience. But the same software can be running on, say, an iPad, or I don't know, let's just say a mobile phone, where now the way of operating is changing from a mouse driven experience to a finger driven experience. Like you'll use your thumb, you'll use your index fingers, or however, whatever way you generally interact with experiences. I don't know. I don't know if it was Samsung, or I remember somebody came up with a very interesting user experience where you could just look at the bottom of the screen and auto scroll will happen. I don't know if it is still popular. I still use a very old phone, but again, that is another way of another consideration, basically, right? So whenever you are, or whenever we are setting up a user experience, we are figuring out the right strategy. We consider all of this. We consider, okay, this piece of software is going to run on, say, a tablet computer. So these are the touch targets that we have to worry about. This is the hierarchy, this is the grid system, and probably micro animation. So we consider all of that based on the form factor of the device itself, right? The fourth aspect is time. So this is basically I'll explain that with an example. Let's just say you're trying to send an attachment to somebody using Gmail. Like whenever you try to, say, drag the file and drop in the Gmail's interface, you see a small loader that comes in. So what is happening there is the experience, the software is giving you feedback. It is telling you, hey, you know what, your operation is in progress. And once the file is uploaded, then you get some kind of a visual indication, which then tells you that, hey, you know what, the file was successfully uploaded, right? So all of these communication, the animations, the moving media in general, they are considered basically a function of time. And then, of course, the behavior. So this is basically the action reaction of an interface. So you tap on a button, the button gives you a feedback. Like, I don't know. So I don't know. I think Material had that. You basically tap on a button, it'll give you a ripple kind of an effect to communicate to you, hey, you know what, your tap was registered, right? You tapped on the button, you clicked on the button, and we have received the input, and then we will now figure out whatever operation that you wanted to perform by clicking on that button. So these are general 5 dimensions of interaction design. Now we will get into UX design as a career. So as Divij also mentioned, I also mentioned, we both of us have a computer science background, and at least I have not received any formal education, and majority of the learning has been through trial and error. We were able to find certain pieces of information. We got curious, we explored, and then we learned, and then we failed. We were not aware of a lot of basic fundamentals of design practice. So a lot of those things came naturally to us. So this way of growing can be different from, say, if you have a formal education or a training in design, right? Say, for example, you enroll yourself in, I don't know, say, a good design institution, and you are now pursuing bachelor's or master's in design. The chances are you will be taught a lot of these fundamentals from the beginning itself. So the moment you start getting into the application of your learning, you will have certain ideas, like, so okay, fine, this is the problem that I need to solve, and these are different frameworks, human computer interaction framework, design thinking framework, whatever, right? And probably I can apply some of these things to solve this particular problem or come up with a solution for this particular problem, right? That is how you generally proceed with your career. That is how you learn and grow, right? In our case, as I said, a lot of things were dependent on trial and errors. Both are two different ways of pursuing a career in design or in general, like in any kind of professional field. So, but the biggest question that comes to our mind, especially when we are starting our career, um, is there a demand? Right. So any career basically depends on demand and supply. Simple philosophy of demand and supply. The more the demand, and then say if the supply is less, you'll have the cost, which will be higher, and it can be vice versa as well. At this point in time, there is definitely, the demand is definitely there. The designers are also there, as in the number of designers are there, of course, in comparison to other technical disciplines. For example, say software development, the numbers are relatively lower, but the demand is still there. So demand is high, the supply is low. The people who are available, then we also have issues with the overall quality and specific experience of the individuals that we interview and hire, right? So, for example, we work very heavily with B2B clients. The way you perform certain design activities when you're dealing with B2B kind of a software product is slightly different from the way you deal with B2C kind of products, right? So your exposure, for example, to the users decreases. Like, so for example, if I ask you to come up with a design an e-commerce application, for example, right? It will be easy for you to find out 10 people that you can speak with and conduct a preliminary round of research, or let's just say competitive research. So if I ask you to come up with a say again e-commerce kind of an application, you can simply study. There are literally tens of very popular e-commerce platforms that are out there, so you can go and study and see how they are doing things and how you can improve the experience and all that. But when you deal with B2B applications, so we do run into a lot of constraints. So first of all, even though there will be competitors, you may not have direct access to them. Then you have to figure out some other creative way of carrying out the research, right? So when we hire, we sometimes operate in that kind of with that kind of a constraint. We do look for somebody who can think from all the perspectives. Our majority of the hiring is based on generalist designers, especially in India, at least as far as I'm aware. Majority of the design hiring happens at the generalist level, and there's a difference between generalist and specialist. I'll cover that in a couple of minutes. So as you can see, you may have experience over the last 10-15 years. A lot of experiences are now moving towards screen-based experiences. In the future, we will probably be able to get rid of the medium aspect of user experience completely. With the way AR, VR, and some of these other things are coming up, and the technology that we are seeing, the pace at which the tech is evolving, it is highly likely that over the next decade or so, we may come up with user experiences which are going to get rid of the necessity of a phone. As in, you'll still have a phone and a screen-based device, but some of the experiences are now going to be more popular in the AR VR domain, or any other sensory based experiences. But yes, as you can see, we are so this is my favorite example. So anybody who has dealt with passport creation mechanism, especially in India, if you would have experienced the older way of doing things and compare it with the newer way of doing things, you'll find drastic changes. And TCS, I think TCS was the company which was responsible for making all of this happen, and they have done tremendous job at it. A lot of those touch points between, say, a passport applicant and the passport authority have now migrated from physical touch points to digital touch points. including police verification. So generally when we talk about software applications, we kind of stay limited to the experiences that we deal with, e-commerce, and emails, and websites, and reading, and sending messages and stuff. But uh, software is beyond that. They're part of our life now, which we don't even realize. We are sitting in the living room, you're watching a movie on Netflix, and you forget that, okay, you know what, it is a smart TV. 10 years ago, it was not that popular. People were not even at least for me, I was not even if you would have asked me 10 years ago that I would be sitting in my living room watching Netflix on my smart TV, I probably would have laughed it off, right? So yeah, so that is how things are evolving. So with all of those things happening, there is always going to be need of designers. In India, I don't know how many of you follow startup ecosystem last few years, who are tremendous in terms of startup growth, both in terms of fundings that we have been able to get, and also the growth we have been able to achieve. Our population is a lot. Official figures I think are around 135 crore. I personally believe it would be at least 150 crore. So with population, you're looking at impact. You're looking at people that you can you can help through your design thinking, through your design skills. And then, of course, with each and every type of device coming in, say a mobile device, tablet device, wearable devices, ARs and VRs, and kiosk, and smart TVs and whatnot. Each and every one of these devices have their own constraints. Like, for example, if you're watching a TV, the chances are you'll be watching it from probably 10, 15 to 25 feet away. If you are using a software application on your phone, you'll literally be a few inches away from the screen, right? So these are certain considerations that you have to make when you are designing an experience for a specific device. Again, Netflix example. Netflix runs on your phone. At the same time, it also runs on your TV, right? So you as a consumer can watch the same content on both the device types. But from design angle and also from the development angle, there are a lot of differences, and that is where the designers come in. They utilize their skills, they utilize their practices, they utilize their mental capacity to think about some of these constraints and features and devices, and then come up with certain applications. What is also important is the ability to think, as I just mentioned. um, when you will progress as a designer, you will be able to develop skills very fast, right? So you may like, for example, it's my personal belief, I can be wrong, of course, but um, I always treated visual design as like mathematics. The more I practiced, the better I got, right? Colors till today is something that I very deeply struggle with, but I believe at least I am better than what I was a few years ago. So the more you practice, your skill, your craft gets better. What is what is relatively more difficult to develop is the ability to think, like to take a step back and sometimes ask if we really need a solution, or no, or if this kind of us if this kind of solution is what is going to work. And a lot of times when we work with clients, when they come up with the problem statement, we love to take a step back and validate the problem statement. We try to make sure that, okay, whatever problem that we are talking about, that is really a problem, right? Now, for example, with the entire revolution, or I love to call it a revolution, the entire revolution of UPI happened in India, right? Or say digital transactions in general, not UPI specific. Uh, it was very difficult for a lot of people to let go of the older ways of doing things. So the way we used to operate in the past was, say, if I had to make a transfer to somebody's account, I would go to the bank, I'll fill up a specific transfer form or something, money transfer form or something. I'll hand it over to somebody in the bank, and then they will take it in, and they'll perform the process, and it'll take probably an hour, 2 hour, or whatever whatever time frame that they had. But now it is, you can simply open up the application of the particular bank and do the transfer, and in a lot of cases it is real time. Like, immediately it hits the account of the other person. It is very easy for people like us, the younger generation, to do. But for example, my dad is close to 60 years old. Like, now he has gotten comfortable moving money online. But earlier it was very difficult for him. Like, every time I would, he would, ask me, I need to send money to this account, to that account. I need to go to this bank, and I tell him, hey, you can install the application, or you can log into your web portal and do that. And he was not like, he may agree because I'm his son. I'm trying to tell something to him. So he sometimes would agree, but he always had the hesitation. Like, he could never understand how exactly is this happening. Like, will I lose my money? Money happens to be one of those very personal and personal aspect of every person there, right? So that is how the lives have changed. And we are literally, when we talk about 135, 150 crore people, you can now imagine the scale of impact, right? So as long as we have problems like those to solve, we have people to reach, there will always be a need of designers. So again, yeah, so as I mentioned a few minutes ago, generalist versus specialist in UX design. In a nutshell, when we talk about generalists, it is more of a broader impact. For example, I can be somebody who understands technology, who understands design, who understand some other aspects of software development. I can apply all of those understandings to come up with a specific solution. At the same time, there can be a different approach where, let's just say, I am more inclined towards user research, right? So I have, I don't know, psychology background or some other anthropology background or something like that, and I am more of a research person, right? Whatever is the reason. So my contribution is going to be always deeper, because I'll be focusing on one specific area of the entire UX contribution, which happens to be research. That is where what I excel in. That is what I have received my education in. That is what I have experience in, or whatever the reasons could be. In India, and in fact, if I am not wrong, majority of the hirings in general in the design domain happens based on the generalists framework, especially especially at the early part of the careers. The senior designers and experienced designers, different startups may have different needs. Like, for example, somebody like Amazon or Flipkart would be hiring for a lot of research. No, they would have research specific vertical as well. But all the other startups, majority of the other startups, when they hire for designers, they look for variety of skills. Like, say, if I'm applying at I don't know, say XYZ company, they are going to ask me all sorts of questions, from skill based questions to leadership questions to how I think about problems, how I solve problems. And different people have different ways of evaluation and stuff. But the point here is, people in general are going, especially when you are early in your career and you're interviewing anywhere with us, or in anywhere in general, very highly likely that you will be asked a lot of general questions. And that is done because they are looking for generalists, people who understand fundamentals of each and every aspect of UX umbrella. They may not have experience in that, especially since they are early in their careers, but at least they have fundamental understanding. So when I ask somebody, can you tell me what is a grid system? Like, they should know at least the popular grid systems, how they are used, why they are used. What if I don't have a grid system? There are different design patterns. That level of understanding is what we definitely look for. It is absolutely fine that you probably do not have an in-depth understanding of some of those things. For example, nested grids. It's absolutely okay, and that is why we are there as a team to help in some of those areas. But then you should be honest and upfront, telling, hey, what, I understand what grid systems are, I know how they function, etc., but there are certain specific aspect of the grid system which I have not gotten exposure in, and I think I can do better there, right? So that is how journalists in general operate. They would understand how primary research functions. They would understand how secondary research functions, like, and then in general, fundamentals of information architecture, wireframing, prototyping, interaction design, UX QA. So they would understand a little bit of all of this, and when they join our team, then we are confident, hey, you know what, we deal with projects where we have to, as a design team, we have to touch all of these different aspects of the user experience, so I can have this person contribute there. The flip side would be, say, if I have a project where design research is required, then I would rather look for somebody who is either a specialist in design research, or somebody in the team who is a generalist but has a more of an inclination towards research. So person understands all the aspect of design umbrella, but has a better has a deeper inclination towards say research, right? So those are the ways in which some of these hidings they change, and the way we design our own career, that kind of changes. Completely personal decision. If you want to pursue a specific practice within the umbrella, absolutely fine. As long as you're doing good there, as long as you understand and enjoy the field. If you want to get into more of a generalist role, that is also okay, but then it will purely depend on the team that that you wish to be a part of, right? Depending on what they are looking for, and based on that you then decide, okay, fine, if that particular team is going to be a good fit for me or not, right? So from a career growth perspective, as I said, purely depending on which path you choose, as a generalist, as a specialist, or you start out as a generalist and later pursue more of a specialist role. Few things may change, but this is a very nice representation of how generally people evolve, right? So for example, when you join as associate UX designer or an intern at a company, you can see that you are mostly involved in specific practice or deliverables, right? When you graduate, you get more skilled, you practice more, you then get into more of a senior role where now you are responsible for processes, right? So these are specific things there. Then you can graduate even more, a few more years down the line, some more experience under your belt. Then you can look into the entire possibility of managing and leading a team, right? And then similarly, you then graduate from there, you get into more of a strategic level where, like for example, we have people in our team who are say heads of practices, and they are involved in multiple client engagements. So they are not dedicated to a specific client or specific practice. Their reach and impact is broader, right? That is what happens at this design manager level, principal designer level. Then you get into the entire leadership role again. For some people this journey is short, for some people this journey is long. Sometimes you control it, sometimes you don't. For example, in my case, the journey was relatively shorter. I do know some people who are heads of design at a lot of excellent startups, doing fantastic work with 6 years, 8 years kind of an experience as well. So it will purely depend on what kind of a situation you will get into. uh, Generally the years of experience does not really reflect your actual value that you are generally able to provide to an organization or a team. And that's where the skills and the intelligence levels and experiences and all of these things differ. But it is absolutely fine. You need not pressure yourself, oh, you know what, I have 20 years of experience and I haven't become a design leader, or hey, you know what, I have 1 year of experience and I haven't become a UX manager yet. So the different people have different ways of growing depending on where you join, what company you join, what team you join. You may have different titles to deal with, different aspects to deal with. Sometimes, especially when we were small, for example, I was also part of a lot of individual deliveries as well. So I was responsible for scaling the team. Of course, I would conduct interviews, I would evaluate portfolios, etc., etc. At the same time, I would also go back and perform a specific practice, do a research, or set up a prototype or whatever it is, whatever that I could do to help my team. Now the role has changed. Now, of course, I am very rarely involved in hands-on implementation. I still do that over the weekends, and just to make sure that I understand some of these things, especially when you look at tools like Figma. You realize the pace at which some of these problems are getting solved, right? So it is important that you have to be on top of what is going on right now, no matter at what stage of career you are in. If you're at the beginning level, or you're at the advanced level, or at the leadership level. That's how generally a career growth kind of looks like. General umbrella, different, as I said, different companies will have different horizon of growth. For example, we have 6 different levels within the UX designations. We have associate UX designer. We have 2 levels within senior UX designers. We have lead UX designers and UX managers. We have head of design, and we of course have the director of design, right? So that's how we function. That is the general way a lot of companies function, but you may be able to see a lot of differences here and there. Just yesterday, I was listening to a wonderful podcast, and the one of the guys there, I think he's leading, or at least, I mean, this was an old podcast. I think he was leading design team at Walmart or some pretty large company, and he mentioned a very interesting thing. He said, in their team, they allow their people to pick their designation, right? So, for example, I can pick a designation which will be something like, head of problem solving, right? So, so different companies will have different structures. A majority of the companies will have clearly defined structures. You will not see this kind of approach very commonly used everywhere. But the point here is the title is something which is going to have different horizons. For example, with Coditas, you have to have at least 1 year of experience to be called as a UX designer. If you have less than 1 year of experience, you will be associate UX designer. Somewhere else, it can be something else. Like, I don't know, some other company will say you have to have at least 2 years to get into a UX design role, and till then you are associate UX designer, right? So designations and titles, they may change depending on which company you're kind of working with. So that's how generally the growth of a UX designer kind of happens over a period of time, right? We can pick questions at this point in time. Shivani, anything? Yeah, any interesting question that we have come up with? I think
Yes.
we can pick a few questions. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, we have the first question from Rahul Mane asking, what are the coding languages we must know to be a UX designer?
Oh, interesting. Excellent question. Divij, feel free to jump in. You also have a computer science background, so I'm sure you would have inputs as well. But for me, so there's no Bible out there. Just a quick disclaimer. Even if you don't know any of the programming languages, is absolutely fine. In my case, what happened was, since I had a computer science background, I started with a little bit of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, and stuff. Um, so it helped me personally a lot. So when I started, for example, learning grid systems, I realized, okay, whatever that I was designing is going to be translated to, say, a piece of code, and this is how things are going to function. So when I started working with the dev teams, it was natural for me to understand the language that they were speaking, and the entire communication, became very easy. Even today, I'm very comfortable working with tech teams. Like, I know exactly what they mean, when they say functions, when they talk about APIs, when they talk about servers and client side rendering, right? So if you have certain level of technical expertise, not specific to a programming language in general, but you understand how a software functions, it gets easier for you to communicate. But that being said, there's no compulsion as such. Like, I don't think any of the good design team is going to ask you very deep questions on technical aspect of a specific thing. They might ask you a few questions around CSS specifically. They might ask you questions around, I don't know, say for example, if you are designing for native platforms like native iOS app or native Android app, there may be a few technical questions here and there, but they are almost never a very rigid way of evaluation. So one line answer, there is no specific programming language, but if you are really interested, it will help if you understand a little bit of CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. Divij, anything to add there?
Yeah, just like Chandan said, it is more about communication. You are not, as a UX designer, going to code yourself. But imagine, so let's say, as a traveler, so for an example, as a traveler, you're going to some other country, or someone else is coming to our country. Whenever we see foreigners speaking Hindi words, we are really impressed. And even if, let's say, you're going to Japan, and even if you can say some basic words or try to understand their language, right, or try to speak to them that way, it a connection builds up, right? So as a team, if you can understand what basics coding does have, what problems do they face, what kind of language do they need to use, even that is enough, and it builds an empathy. Empathy is also the basic of UX design itself. So it's all for communication. But even if you do not understand or know any language, programming language, even that is fine. It's just a plus point, but it's not a prerequisite.
Yeah, definitely is. Yeah. Good
Uh,
question. I love the question.
yeah. Okay, thank you. Next question we have from Sumedha Joshi asking, can you explain how students can practice user interviews, journey maps, user flows when we cannot find real users?
Yeah, no, no, definitely. I think, in fact, that's a problem that I personally dealt with as well when I was learning. But trust me, some of these things are easier to execute than we think, right? For example, purely from practice perspective, I'll tell you exactly what I did. I did not have a smartphone for the longest of the time. Like the first time I started a smart, I got a small, somebody in fact gifted a small Android phone to me was in 2015, if I remember correctly. Yes, it was the first time when I got my hands on a, yeah, on an Android phone, right? So, but I started designing much before that. I started, designing in 2012, if I remember correctly. And the first problem that I attempted to solve was to, look at WhatsApp in general and see how what kind of problems my friends were kind of facing. Now, just a quick disclaimer there. In the entire research, fraternity, it is generally recommended that you do not interact with the first level of network. Like for example, if you have to carry out a research on how to improve uh, e-commerce experience, it is generally recommended that you don't speak with your friends, you don't speak with your family, because then you have certain kind of biases coming in. They may or may not be able to tell you things honestly and openly. So it is recommended that you reach out to the second degree of network, or even farther away you utilize gorilla research, or some other quantitative way of doing a research. But what I did was, since I of course I did not know that some of these recommendations were there in place. um, so what I did was, I first of all saw all of my friends, a lot of my friends using WhatsApp very frequently, and we used to be like, my generation was more of a SMS people, right? So, but then I saw that a lot of people moved to WhatsApp, and I was very curious. Hey, you know what? Why is this happening suddenly? The way we were interacting using SMS is changed from that way of operating to a internet based sending messages system, right? um, and then I just started having conversation. I spoke with, I don't even remember how many friends of mine, just to get an idea of why they were using WhatsApp, what are the advantages they found over using SMS or any other way of communication. And I received a lot of different answers. Some people said, I find it cheaper to use. So SMS back in the day was like, if you did not have a pack and stuff, they would charge anywhere between 1 rupee, no sorry, 10 paisa to 1.5 rupee, depending on which sim card, which plan you had. So relatively it was, and that is of course per SMS. So if I am having a chat with my brother, for example, and we send hundreds of messages a day, I would end up spending a lot of money. But so WhatsApp came, this they simplified this entire thing. They made it cheaper that for the communication to happen. Of course, they then over a period of time made it easier to share media files. So if you have to share, for example, a video over SMS back in the day, there was a MMS service that you had to subscribe to, and that was in itself very costly affair. But then WhatsApp came, and you could attach a image or a video and simply send to somebody, right? So as a student, when you want to practice a specific thing, at least at this point in time, I cannot think of any practice which you cannot perform just because you're a student. It does not matter, right? You literally have to talk to, like, if when you talk about research specifically, and you want to practice how to speak with people, how to come up with questions, you can pick any problem statement. Like, one of my most favorite problem statement that I use during interviews is, how would you help me design a children's park? Right, that's a question that I ask. Probably I shouldn't have told that, but but anyway, so that is a question that I ask during interviews, whenever I am conducting interviews. And the reason I do that is because you as a candidate are now pushed to think unconventionally, right? You are used to of designing software applications, screen based applications, and suddenly I'm asking you to design a children's park. And when you are midway your solution, I will throw in certain constraints. Like, I will not talk about these constraints now, otherwise, but anyway, so So that is how generally things function. The design fundamentals can be applied in any capacity at any point in time, right? For example, when we work with clients, even though the entire process consists of 20 to 25 different specific practices, we don't apply all of that to the problem that we have to solve. We pick and choose. Similarly, you can decide as a student, it does not matter what stage of career you are in. If you want to carry out user research, identify a specific problem. It can be a real world problem. For example, I don't know, public transport system, or designing a water bottle. Some of these problem statements I very frequently use, or a children's park, or whatever it is. Or you can be more software specific, right? You can just go and start a conversation around, hey, do you use Amazon, or do you use Flipkart? Somebody will tell you I use Amazon, somebody will tell you I use Flipkart, and then you ask them, okay, can you tell me why is the reason why you use Flipkart and not Amazon? And then after speaking to a lot of people, you start identifying certain theme, right? So for example, you will have people saying, I trust Amazon more because their customer experience is higher. Then you have to then go ahead and ask, what do you mean by customer experience? Do you mean I don't know, whenever you run into an issue, you can speak to the customer care, you can speak to a human from the customer care. And when you interact with Flipkart, when you're trying to reach out to customer care, you generally run into a chatbot experience, for example, right? So again, that is just an example of kind of input that you might receive. So how to do it is, the answer to that is, pick a specific problem. Whatever is the problem does not really matter if you want to learn, and just start having conversations specifically related to research. If you want to get into more of a visual design thing, right, then you will have to, then what you can do, and what I did was, I used to simply take screenshots on my friend's phone. I would have them email the screenshots to me. I would open them in Photoshop, and that is how old I am. I used to design in Photoshop. I would open them in Photoshop, and then I would start understanding, okay, I see a button here, I see this component here. I had no idea that tabs were called tabs back then. And I would always try and understand, okay, I see a tab here, let me go and see Android's design guideline, let me see what they talk about this kind of a design pattern, can I see something similar to this there? So of course the learning process is lengthier in that case, but at least you're not stuck. You are the biggest sin that you will commit as a professional in your career is to stay stuck. You should never be stuck. A smallest of the progress counts, right? So just because you don't have a uh, you know uh, conventional education in a specific field does not mean that you cannot make progress in this day and age, right? Of course, unless you're talking about something like medical science and stuff, don't do that. Don't start practicing medical science in your home and start recommending medicines to people, which is very common, unfortunately, in Indian household. But when we talk about user experience in general, software applications in general, it's very easy to get started and keep making progress.
All right. Okay. Thank you for the detailed answer, Chandan. There are a bunch of questions more. I think plenty of questions coming in, but do we have time, or should we move to the second section?
Oh, I think we should move. It's 11:25 already. I
Yeah.
think we
Right.
just have 35 minutes. Yeah. I think towards the end, then we can come back to the questions.
Sure. Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
You can.
Awesome. Divij, do you want to take it over? Do you want me to continue the screen share, or you want to do that?
No, I can screen share at my end, so I'll do
Okay.
that.
Okay. Fine. So I will stop. Just give me a minute. Yeah, Divij, good. Yeah, Divij, I think you can start the screen share.
Yes. Divij, it's visible.
All right. So after all those details about UX design, interaction design, how the career growth happens, now, of course, lots of people might have questions how we can start learning about it. And there are lots of training programs, or rather lots of certifications online, lots of advertisements we see on the TV. Even in the Asia Cup, there was advertisement about data science, about it. There is advertisements about cryptocurrency and blockchains. So we also have a UX and interaction design training program that happens at Coditas, and that is what I'm going to talk about now. So why did we set up this training program, right? So when you take any online course, usually the most common course that my students have taken, my past students, is the Google UX design certification. But what usually happens is they work in isolation, they work as an individual, they do not work in a team per se, they cannot communicate with the whole team, they do not have a senior to train them. So many of these problems, or rather limitations, come when you are doing an online course where it's only a one-way conversation. Some platforms do it well, some platforms not so much, but this training program we set up to train for the right context. Of course, it also is very important that what kind of problem you are picking, right? Is it really feasible? Do you really have people around to talk to, right? So if we pick up a problem that is, let's say, obsolete, or that is not reasonable for us, we might then hit a dead end or go in the loops, right? So we start with picking up topics which are relevant, which are important, which are coming up, like let's say financial technology, fintech, or e-commerce itself, right? So we pick those topics and we work like how an actual design team works. Usually in this training program, we work in a team, so you have teammates which will help you. So no design is created by an individual designers. Usually in big companies, design is done in teams. Design is done by lots of people, right? So you work in a team. You have a senior mentor which can guide you. You have me, I can also guide you. So you have almost 3 to 4 people at least around you, which work on your project or which work in your training alongside you. So that is the right context to solve the problem, to make the design. So this is why we set up this training program, to train for the right skills. So as Chandan mentioned, there are lots of skills, lots of things to learn in UX design itself. There's a big chart that we saw, right? So lots of things are there. You can become a generalist or a specialist. Usually when we start, we try to become a generalist because that increases our aspects of getting hired. So we learn, let's say there are motion designers, there are UI designers, there is UX designers, there is UX researchers, UX writers, right? So then we might have to think about what particular things we need to pick up and what do we need to learn. So we make sure that our trainees learn the right skills, not something which is very situational, not something which might not be required in all the contexts, right? So no fancy tools, no magic tricks. We just learn the user-centered design practice and how the process works, which is fundamental to all the other things that happen. And of course, we train in our training program with the right exposure, so it's a highly collaborative environment. So almost 4 to 5 batches have happened in the past. This batch was happening online, so all the trainees were coming to the office and they could talk to any designer in the whole organization. So on the floor, lots of designers are there. They can strike a conversation, take feedback on their design, and so on. So it's a highly collaborative environment, and there's no competition as such. So everyone in your batch roots for your success, right? So that is why we set up this training program, so that no designer has to learn the design process itself in isolation, and they can actually look at how the whole infrastructure is, or how it actually happens, right? So sometimes if we learn design in isolation, um, we might also not be ready for critical feedback. We might think our way is the right way. So all these things, biases may come. But when you work in a team, you are always getting a feedback. You know your design can never be the best, and design itself, the cycle of designing a better product never stops. There's always iterations, right? Now, what does the training look like? The training usually goes on for 12 to 13 weeks. We work from Monday to Friday, so 5 days a week and 8 hours a day. And in the whole day, usually there's 2 to 3 hours of a lecture from my side. So we talk about a topic for the day, and then we try to do lots of hands-on activities. We try to work with the team and do some assignments, create our project. So that is where the other hours of the day go. So usually this is how we work. Saturday and Sunday is off. Of course, we try and not work on those days, right? So we keep it free. So for the whole 12 weeks, from week 1 to week 4, we learn the UX fundamentals. We try to understand how the UX process works, what are the basic skill set you require, like empathy, like understanding of visual design, like asking the right questions and doing the research in the right manner, right? So we learn about the fundamentals through live sessions, through certain activities that we do. We learn about the UX fundamentals or the process itself, because it's not only about design, it's also about research, it's also about ideations. So that is what we talk about in the first 4 weeks. The next week 5 to week 8, we start with our project. And of course, at every stage you will be getting personalized feedback from my end. You will also be assigned a senior mentor, right? So I, as a trainer, give you certain inputs because I am taking the classes and teaching you, but there's also someone from the industry itself, someone from the Coditas itself, a senior designer, who gives you feedback and tells you how you're doing, what can you improve, and all those things. So you always get personalized feedback. And from week 5 to week 8, we start then doing the process. So the aim at the end of this training program is to have a portfolio project for you, which you can upload on a Behance. Have your portfolio, so at least one whole project which follows all the steps from research to design itself, right? So all the 5-6 steps we follow, and we create one finalized project that can help you score a job anywhere you apply, right? Or if you already have a portfolio, you can add it to your portfolio itself. So that is what we start from week 5 to week 8, working on our projects with our teams. And then from week 9 to
Divij, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just a quick question. Can you use the full screen button there at the bottom right corner? Bottom right
okay,
corner. Yeah, so that will.
all right.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so the final journey of week 9 to week 12, that is where we finalize our things, and we work on UI design itself. If we have time left, we can work on interaction designs, creating certain micro interactions if possible. And then, of course, Coditas also hires people from the training batch itself. So you also have interviews which you can give, and you can show your portfolio. And certain number of people may get hired in Coditas itself. And of course, everyone in the training batch gets a certification, right? So that is how the training concludes. And in the end, you have a full-fledged project which can help you getting hired in Coditas itself, of course. But if not, then you can show that in your future interviews as a UX design trainee or interviewee, right? So this is how the whole training looks like as a whole. Now, what do you get from this training program? You get one-on-one guidance through mentorship. So like I said, there are senior designers which can guide you, and then there is I who can guide you. And of course, since it has been happening online, there are lots of people, and Chandan himself is available many times, and we can have interaction with him also. So there's lots of one-to-one guidance happening, and lots of people to give you advice or feedback on your progress. You also gain an exposure of how actually a design team functions, and how design happens in a team. How, of course, it also leads to collaborative skills, team skills, leadership skills. Lots of things happen. And of course, you can also get a view of how we collaborate with clients. So even clients are there. We are not designing so we are not always designing an app that we thought of. We are trying to solve problems with clients. So we also have to think about what client has to say about it. What are the constraints? What are the business constraints? What are the user constraints? For example, is it India that they are designing for? Is it US? Are they designing for users in Middle East? So different things like that can happen. So those constraints we have to keep in mind also. And then of course we work with the developers to create large scale products. Of course, we do not come up with a product in the project itself, but yes, you can again look at how these things are working and how the design team functions. And then there are certain design events that happen every Friday. We have small discussion about a certain topic, upcoming topic, right? One of our designers themselves, they give a presentation and we have a discussion about certain things. So recently we had talked about, let's say, user interface in video games, or sometimes we talk about accessibility. Recently, it was talked about how um, propaganda is done through visual design, right? So these interesting topics about upcoming things, about things that we might not know about, so that is what we talk about. And there are other design events also that happen, and you get the access to these in office things that happen. And then, of course, like I said, you may get an opportunity to join us as a full-time UX designer, right? You may get hired by Coditas itself. So you start as an associate UX designer, and you can get hired full-time basis, and then you can start working from Pune or Mumbai or wherever you are located, right? So these are some testimonials from our previous batches, from Zihan, Saloni, and Kshitij. So what did they get from this training program? So you can read this. Of course, Zihan, as he says, he understood how to think like a designer and use empathy. Saloni says it was very helpful getting constant feedback from trainers. And Kshitij says that he could understand UX and interaction design in depth, even when he was very new to it. So this is what our previous design trainees have to say. Of course, you can connect with any of previous trainers on LinkedIn and Instagram, and you can talk about how the training experience was for them. Now, after we are done with the training itself, of course, one-on-one interviews happen in with the Coditas team members itself. Of course, this interview can lead to your hiring in Coditas, and of course, there you can also understand how you can present your work in your future interviews, how you can show your work, how you can show your portfolio, how you can talk about it, how you solve the problem. So certain communication tips and tricks are also given. And you also get um, an idea of how interviews happen. If it is the first time you are getting to know about a UX design interview, or um, giving a first walkthrough of your portfolio, you also get to know how to talk about it, because a good designer is the one who can communicate. If you lack in communication skill, it does not work. Of course, for it's true for almost each and every other arena, but even in design, uh, good communication is important for the interviewer to know what you're thinking, right? That is what matters a lot. So that is what happens after our whole, let's say, project is completed and we are in the final weeks. Of course, you get a certificate for the training once it's complete. um, Certificate is given to everyone, of course, regardless of your hiring or not. So that is something you can put it on your LinkedIn, right? You can share that. And then, of course, certain people might get a full-time opportunity as a UX designer, as a associate UX designer, and they can work with Coditas, working on the projects that we are working on, certain projects which are in-house, certain projects for clients. And of course, it depends upon which team you are placed in, right? So then you will start building experiences for the Coditas team. Now, how you can enroll for this um, next batch? So next batch will be starting from next month, that is October. So usually it's 12 weeks, so it will go until December end, right? And to enroll for this batch, you can just apply by sending an email to designtraining@coditas.com. I think this link will also be pasted in the chat, so you can copy it from there. So this is how you can apply. Just need to send an email, right? And you can follow us on our social media channels, that is LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. If you also, if you're an experienced designer, you have 2-3 years of experience, you can also look at careers.coditas.com to see if there are openings for experienced designers or not, right? So that is about the training program, and that is it from my side. Now, if you have any questions, you can ask, and I'll stop sharing my screen. Or
Yeah, I just Yeah, I would like to just jump in for a quick minute. So, just to elaborate on some of the points that Divij mentioned, guys, right? So, there are a lot of good, great courses out there, design institutions from universities to, specific classes that are out there. They are doing tremendous work. In fact, we hire from a lot of these institutes. This training program, as I mentioned in the beginning, is very carefully designed around what we do specifically. So that is one thing. Second thing is, what works out in our case is that we have a clear mapping between a senior designer and you, right? So you, as a entry level designer, will always have access to somebody whom you can reach out to get any kind of a guidance. It can be related to your design process, it can be career, or I don't know, you just, have a coffee with them, whatever. Right? So we operate as a team very deeply, and as David mentioned, collaboration is extremely critical aspect of our work. Collaboration internally within the team, with our clients, and that is how we manage to deliver value. So communication becomes an extremely important aspect for us. Unfortunately, we do not have a infrastructure at this point in time to train people in the aspect of communication, so we have to rely on every individual's own capability at this point in time, but hopefully in the future we may be able to solve that problem as well. Great, awesome. Shivani, probably we can take a few questions.
Yeah, sure. All right. We have many questions. A few I think we can take up right now. First is from Sham. In Coditas, what UI UX designers actually do? Do they design web and app designs or some product based solution work?
So we all right, so we don't have a reservation towards a specific type of application. We do have projects where the entire suite is needed, right? So from say a web-based, browser-based application, say a software experience, and the same experience has to work on a mobile interface or a tablet interface, and at the same time, certain other level of, like, we may have to design, I don't know, email communication for them, right? So what we focus on is the problem and the approach of solving it. The medium becomes a secondary discussion in terms of strategic, standpoint. So we work on all sorts of, platforms and all sorts of products, and of course there are additional practices. Like, for example, we have a very deep expertise in building very complex, flexible design systems. Some of them, and when I talk about design systems, I'm talking about like an actual design system, not really a pattern library. But yeah, as in design guidelines, micro animations, and code bases, and we create a repository for all the design decisions in general, which includes all the guidelines around a desktop application, around a mobile application, around wearable devices. In fact, for one of our clients in healthcare domain, are we have designed native Windows application as well, right? So anybody here who's using a Windows machine, like when you're trying to open VLC media player, for example. So VLC media player is an example of a native Windows application. So we have done all sorts of applications. For us, what matters is, what is the problem that we are looking at, the probability of the end users interacting with that medium. So if we know that they will be working on a mobile device more, then we will go with a mobile first strategy. If we know, for example, majority of the B2B applications, if we know for sure that they are going to be using the application on a desktop computer, then we go for a desktop first approach. So it will purely depend on that. As a team, we are fully equipped to deal with all sorts of problems.
All right, thank you. Next question is from Sanket. How should we improve our portfolio?
Okay, great question. If you are early in your career, capture your own contribution and understanding very clearly. And one thing that you have to understand is that teams like us, we evaluate hundreds of portfolios every week, right? What would make your portfolio stand out is what the real question is, and I cannot answer that. I am not the one who's setting up a portfolio. Divij is not the one. Shivani is not the one, right? You are the one who is going to be setting up a portfolio, right? So there is no one single answer to this question. Different teams are going to be looking for different types of deliverables. In general, what works out for us, and then I'll talk about just for us, if we have access to a portfolio, it is fine. If we don't have access to a portfolio as well, like, I know we are aware that a lot of companies do not allow their people to host or talk about any of the company related work publicly. So in those cases, but those things are more common in the senior hiring. For entry level hiring, we appreciate if there is a portfolio. Otherwise, we fully rely on a design process. So when we are looking at a portfolio, we look for a basic understanding of a design process, right? So if you have taken a hypothetical problem statement and you're trying to solve that and you're trying to utilize your case study to talk about your approach, we look for what you are aware of and what practices you followed. So is your case, so if you carried out user research, is your case study talking about it? Like, and when I say at least I personally don't get into the depth of what questions were asked. I get into the depth of what strategy was used. How do you know for sure a qualitative way of carrying out research was going to be more effective in order to solve that specific problem? Like, did you carry out a quantitative research method, right? Or say when you went ahead and included competitive research in your case study, what were the reasoning behind selecting certain competitors? Like, again, I'll go back to e-commerce example. Why did you select Amazon and Flipkart and not why not Myntra, right? And what are the reasonings behind it? That is there. And the most important part, of course, if I have access to a portfolio, not really important. It's not really a blocker as such, but I really appreciate when I see a prototype. And what I mean by a prototype, it is very easy and quick to set up a prototype. By the way, if you can use Figma, you can, whatever tool that you're using, it is literally by selecting a hotspot, connecting a few screens. So when I am looking at a prototype, I do not look at it from a perspective how clean the prototype is, especially for the entry level designers. I look for the ability to prototype, right? So small things like, do you understand that? So I'll tell you what I see most commonly, done mistakes in a specific prototype. And very simple thing, right? When you, for example, open Amazon.com, sorry, Amazon's app on your phone, you'll see that the bottom bar has a navigation. That's the primary navigation. And when you're scrolling the screen, the primary navigation stays there. Similar thing happens for the top bar. Like in the top section of your phone has certain components which generally they stick to the top of the phone, right? When you're scaling. When we set up a prototype as a designer, we forget that, right? Our prototype does not include, and it is very easy to do. It is very easy to fix some of those components, right? So I try to look for those things, like those small detail level understanding, because again, some of these things, they come, they are very innate, right? No matter how much I tell you, no matter how much I teach you, no matter how much I train you, I don't know, scold you, help you, whatever it is, if you don't fix them, if you don't realize the importance of them, if you're not able to match your own experience, real world experience, to the prototype that you're setting up, then that's a huge disconnect for me. So those are things that I look for. If you're setting up a case study at the entry level, as an entry level designer, uh, try to be very clear on uh, what process you followed and why you followed those process. I was speaking with somebody a couple of weeks ago on specifically the same topic, and during the conversation, what I realized was we can probably treat some of these problem statements from a design angle as well. So if you are setting up a prototype with an intention to crack an interview or get a job somewhere, it would make sense to just reach out to senior designers and collect feedback from people in general, like, hey Chandan, I see you're hiring, I assume that portfolio review is a part of your hiring process. Can you help me identify, can you help me with 5 things that you generally look for? You reach out to Divij as well, you reach out to somebody else as well. That way you do a little bit of research to find out, okay, what generally is accepted. You will not be able to find out one single solution which will work for every job application, but at least you'll get some clarity. That is the way that I would recommend that you should go about it. Divij, anything to add there?
Yeah, there are a lot of things. Of course, I do not know which stage you are at. Um, Whoever asked the question, but yeah. So if you are just starting out, of course, try to include as many things of UX process as you can, because I see in portfolios of students, some people have just designed 2 screens and they have put it on Behance, 3 screens and put it on Behance. So just screens they have designed. Try to at least have 1 or 2 projects which talk about the whole process of UX. If that is possible, that is good. Other than that, of course, you can include prototypes to show that you also have prototyping. You can also do prototyping. Certain people would also add illustrations, custom illustrations. I don't think that is essential. After you've done all this, try to make it visually appealing, because not every, so let's say if you are the first person being hired as a UX designer in a company, so for some person who does not understand UX or design itself, something which is visually appealing works usually. Everyone likes something that looks good, right? So the next step would be to make sure that it's visually appealing. And finally, once you have done it, so you have the at least one project with the whole process, it is visually appealing, then you can customize it according to yourself. So you can add some personal comments at certain places. You can tell what you thought while doing it. So a custom touch or a personal touch to the project, that is what makes it stand out from other designers, stand out from other Behance profiles. So I think these three things, if
Hmm.
you do at the entry level, that is more than enough.
Nice, nice.
All right, thank you. Next question we have from Shankar Kumar asking, is the training online or offline?
Okay, good question. So, first few batches we ran fully online because we were trying to figure out the office infrastructure. The current batch is fully offline. We have the entire team coming here. That comes with its own benefit. You have direct access to all the designers. The design team of is of around 80 people, so you get access to everyone. You see how people function. You have a better exposure to people in general. So that gives a better understanding, especially because after 3 months, what happens is, as Divij explained, we have a process where you will have to go through certain, I think, a couple of rounds of interviews. So, if things work out, you are hired right after that. If they don't work out, then of course, you will have to utilize the learning and start applying somewhere else. Um, so when you are applying, if you have an exposure to how a team functions in a physical environment, it kind of helps. Like, and these are the learnings which are very difficult to explain, right? It is absolutely debatable. Arey, nahi, I can learn the same thing online. Arey, no, I can learn the same thing offline. Debatable. Different teams have different approaches and ways of looking at it. We prefer in office, in person, training as much as possible. So as I said, the current batch is offline. We have a few, no, we have the teams available in the team. They work with, basically, their mentors are sitting right next to them. So they don't have to set up, say, for example, 30 minutes call in a week to get a guidance. They can literally, catch up with them every day for 10 minutes. Right. So overall exposure and opportunities that you get, learning opportunities that you get, it kind of amplifies if you're in the office. So yeah, I think one line answer, it is in office.
All right, okay. Next question we have from Abhijit Singh asking, what's the difference between the work at product based startups versus corporate design studios?
I think excellent question. So especially, it's a very good question, especially when you're looking at it from a early design career perspective. So when you so okay, so first thing that you have to understand is that the design processes are identical. Like, there's the same set of activities that are carried out, irrespective of which, if you're in a design agency or you are in a product company, right? So what changes is the exposure that you get. Now, in my personal belief, for majority of us, probably not for everyone, but for majority of us, when you are early in your career, what you need is exposure to a variety of problems, and that is the way you understand and practice better. Like, for example, by the time I had, say, 5 years of experience, I had worked on e-commerce applications, I had worked on fintech applications, I had worked on AR, VR related stuff, wearable devices. So if I had to make a career switch, or not career switch actually, if I had to, say, for example, move from that company to a different company, and say if I have understood fintech in detail, it would be easier for me to pursue an opportunity in that direction, right? Because I would be clear in my head that, hey, you know what, fintech is a space that fascinates me more. It is absolutely fine. For a lot of people, they are fine with working in an agency kind of a setup for a long period of time. But say for example your intention is to ultimately move to a product company, I would personally recommend that get into an agency kind of a setup where you get an opportunity to experience different types of design processes, different types of problem statements. Some problem statements you will have very small time frame to execute. Some problem statements are going to give you all the luxury of time that you require to execute, right? Different resources, different tools. So that way you are basically exposed to better a variety of problem before you go ahead and make an informed decision, right? um, Again, I love taking examples when I'm explaining something. So I was speaking with somebody, yeah, I think around few months ago, and this person had been working in a product company since I think 2 3 years or so, the same company. And now he was trying to I mean, he kind of realized that okay, that probably that culture, that company or the product or something that he was not very happy about. But when he was trying to move to say agency with this intention to probably get a better exposure to a variety of problem statements, he was finding it difficult, because then whatever interviews that he had kind of appeared for, everyone asked for the variety of experience that he has, right? So he had appeared for a few interviews, not a lot. He was trying to find out, how can I moved from a product company to an agency. So it's basically straight, vice versa, what I was trying to explain earlier. So it is, you know, purely from a personal opinion standpoint, I would recommend if you are early in your career, uh, shoot for exposure in terms of variety of problems. Get into that kind of an environment. If that environment if that environment can be offered by a company like a product company, for example Google and all, you may join a specific team, but then you may have a flexibility to move teams within the same company. So then probably in that case it can work out. But otherwise, for majority of the cases, I would personally recommend to stick to an agency. It can be us, as we are definitely hiring right now, or it can be any other. There are a lot of excellent design agencies, especially in India. I'm very happy to see how some of these companies are faring up. So they are basically inspirations to us.
All right. Thank you. Next question we have from Varsha Badguzar asking, is the training session available on weekends? And a similar, yeah, I think there are many more asking the same question.
Okay. Um, yeah, I think short answer is no. They are not available on weekends. I understand why that question is coming. So that's absolutely okay. But oh, as Divij was trying to explain, the curriculum and the program is designed in such a way that we want to make sure that everyone who's part of the training batch gets a real exposure of how a team function, how a professional design career works and looks like, right? We don't do weekend work at all at the company level. In fact, we have strict policies and philosophies around preventing weekend work. If some, like, I am aware of a few cases where, say, few clients wanted some of our team mates who work over a weekend, they had to go through they literally had to go to the CEO and get an approval. So culturally we don't do that. uh, Once in a while is fine. So that is the replica that we have tried to put together in the curriculum itself. So it is not only about the content that Divij has designed, which is being utilized to train you. It is also about the other aspect of your professional being, right? So the skills you can develop, like practically, it is possible to watch 50 different videos and enroll into two three different online courses and probably get similar kind of knowledge. But knowledge is not the only thing that we are aiming at, right? We are aiming at providing exposure to the entire infrastructure of you as a design professional, which includes being in the office, collaboration, team formation, communication, design reviews, so all of those things are designs, more of a service design than actually a curriculum design. So because of that reason, we don't have a weekend curriculum or weekend infrastructure at this point in time.
All right. Next, we have a question from Ankita asking, is there any interview round for shortlisting candidates for UX training?
Yeah. Yes, there is. So just to give you some perspective, I was looking at the data a few days ago. I realized that we had close to 1,000 applications. So we started the program October last year, if I remember correctly. we had run a like a prototype version of the program quarter before, but the full-fledged infrastructure started in October last year, and we have had close to 1,000 applications so far for our training programs. Of course, we can't train those many people, and this program is again is a infrastructure where we pay you when you are learning, right? So it's not like you have to pay certain amount of money to us to get the training. We pay you a stipend throughout your engagement for 3 months. um, and at the same time, we do have limitations in terms of how many people we can provide attention to, right? So we don't want to get into a situation where we start a batch of 50 people, and then the trainers attention and the senior designers attention, everything is distributed, right? For us, the biggest beneficiary is you. Throughout these 3 months, we start looking at benefit coming out of you after this time, but for the first 3 months, you're the king. We make sure that you are getting the best that we can offer, right, from all the angles. So considering all that, the overall number of people that we choose is relatively lesser. Purely from statistical standpoint, if we have, I think we select, um, in a best case scenario, 5%, 4 to 5% of the total applications that we receive. Interview process is there. We I think email ID is shared with you. The moment you send an email to that ID, you will receive an auto response. The auto response is going to come to you with a Google form, and that is the first stage. Google form, basically, as it's very 5 minutes, no, sorry, a little lower than that. So you can take a few minutes to fill the Google form and apply for the program. After your response is received, then we start going through each and every entry. Please understand that we get hundreds of applications for each of the batches that we have rolled out. So it takes time for us to make sure that each and every per person receives some kind of a response. So we go through that, and then a small communication round happens with the recruiter. The recruiter reaches out to you. And the recruiter tries to have a conversation with you to see how fluent you are in your overall communication skills. And that is the first criteria. And after you qualify that, you then go through. You receive a simple basically a list of problem statements. There are 3-4 problem statements, and these are not really. These are more of a thought process related problem statements. We do not expect you to give us a full-fledged beautiful looking prototype or a case study of any kind. This is basically a simple so what we try to look for there is whatever problem statement that you have chosen, what is the depth to which you have gone to solve the process, and if your submission is able to communicate that very clearly, right? And the problem statement contains a specific set of how to. So Evan, we will tell you what exactly you're supposed to do and what we are expecting out of it, right? And don't worry, it is not spec work. As in we cannot use any of your solutions to use in our client project, which is a very commonly seen comments that I've seen from people. We cannot legally do that at all. So and that is the reason why this problem is more of a thought exercise than anything else. It's really not a design exercise as such. It's more of a thought exercise. That is what we want to do. So that's the overall process. And after we go through your submission, then we start shortlisting people that we can enroll in the batch. And then we go ahead and consult with Divij on what are his opinions around some of these, and then we go ahead and roll out final offer. So that's how the typical life cycle of application to final selection looks like.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have question from Rishikesh asking, is there any prerequisite to apply for design training program? Sumitra also has a similar question on the similar lines. It's are portfolios or case studies compulsory to apply for training?
No. I think David had already mentioned. I think, right. So we don't have a prerequisite as such. As long as you have the right mindset, and that is what we look for during the selection process, we will be very happy to have you on board. Portfolio, there is no requirement for a portfolio at this stage, as in it's not compulsory. If you have one, feel free to share. No matter how embarrassed or happy you are about it, but feel free to share. It just gives us a better understanding of your current standings.
Okay. Vedika Kulkarni has a question asking how many times a year is the training program conducted?
um, 12 weeks program. So, every quarter we have, one batch. So it is 4 times a year is what is the frequency that we have.
Okay. Next question is from Muzib Khan. Can you please explain about information architecture briefly?
Oh, briefly. Good question. I don't know if I can answer that briefly, but I'll try to take best attempt. And again, I'll take an example. So, for example, when you go to, again, Amazon.com, um, you will see a lot of navigation pages. Like, for example, you want to, I don't know, go to your profile, for example, you have to click somewhere to go there. When we or let's just say your operating system, if you want to, for example, delete a file, you have to right click and the contextual menu opens up, and then you select an option and you go ahead and delete that. So information architecture allows you to design the placement of your information and the data flow itself, right? So for example, I have changed my email address in through my profile settings. Right now, let's just say that same email address is reflected somewhere else in some other page. So how would that page come to know that this information was changed, and how would the user reach to this information? Right, all of this is covered in the information architecture. Uh, the best way of figuring out an information architecture is through a card sorting exercise. Uh, but as in card sorting exercise itself is a very involvement intensive exercise. You have to have access to the right people. There's a proper workshop that you have to conduct and all that. So that generally becomes a prerequisite for you to come to an information architecture stage, and that informs all of your information architecture related decisions, like the primary navigation, secondary navigation, contextual navigation, right? Location of a specific provision in the user flow. Like you have a logout button, where exactly is that going to be placed? Right? Generally, if all the software applications that you interact with, you would have realized that uh, the the behavior of logging out at the user level has reduced now. Earlier it was much more prevalent behavior, like we would log in and we would log out. Now we do that in case of very sensitive experiences, like for example, you have a internet banking thing opened up. So generally people make sure that they are logging out. They have implemented auto log out to deal with situations where people do not log out in general. So that is there, right? So in those cases, what happens is people kind of bury those provisions which we do not expect the end users to access frequently down in the information architecture, because they don't expect them to reach there, they don't encourage them to reach there. So it is kind of hidden and put somewhere else. The navigation point is put somewhere else. So that's how generally information architecture looks like. In my personal opinion, just the backbone of any good user experience, right? It's just a backbone. So if you understand it thoroughly, if you are able to practice it well, and if you, and other thing that you are able to do is measure the performance of an information architecture. Those are the ways in which you can even improve your overall skills related to AI.
All right, thank you. Next question we have from Rishikesh asking what technologies are used in UX design.
Divij, do you want to take that up from tools perspective? I think that's a tool perspective.
So technology, I don't think there's the technology talk comes in unless you're designing for, let's say, as Chandan said, kiosks. You're designing for augmented reality. So technology word, I think it's ambiguous here. But if you're talking about the softwares that are used, usually a prototyping software or tool is enough, like Figma or Adobe XD, which helps us to create low fidelity or low detail screens and high detail screens, high fidelity screens. It helps us to also get a prototype where once you click on a screen, you go to next screen and so on. So that interactivity also comes through prototyping. But otherwise, again, if you are trying to, let's say, design animations, if you're designing certain other things, other tools are used. But otherwise, only Figma or Adobe XD are enough. Some people use different tools for wireframing. Some people use different tools for prototyping. So, but usually most of the tools right now are trying to become tools which can go for the whole cycle. So now you can also deal with illustrations in Figma itself. There's a pen tool for it, right? So Figma is something which can do almost all the things. But again, if you want to make really detailed animations, really intricate animations, you will then use After Effects. If you are using images in your UI, you'll have to edit them in Photoshop, and so on. So usually all the visual design softwares are used, as long as you are not going into the VR territory, where then we start using Unity as a software. So yeah, Figma is one-stop shop.
Okay. All right. Another question we have from Omkar asking, I am a front end developer having more than 2 years of experience. Can I make a switch as a UX designer? And are there any challenges for front end developer with coding background?
Definitely, I think we have lots and lots of people, in fact, in our team who worked as a developer for a long time, like 2 years, 3 years, in some cases even 5 years, and then moved to UX design. You can definitely move. The only thing that you'll have to be extremely aware of is that when you move a career, when you switch a career, you then start as a fresher, right? So if you're going from, I don't know, architecture to furniture design, you'll be starting as a fresher in the furniture design, industry. Similar thing happens with design or vice versa. Designer moving to tech, or as a tech you're moving to techie, you're moving to design. You have to then start with, from the ground. So yes, you can move, but then you'll have to have the right mindset, and also you'll probably have to take a hit in the monetary compensation that you get, right? So once you become a fresher in specific industry, then you will be mapped in the same level as the freshers are generally mapped to, right? The same CTC structure, same job responsibility, same exposure to work. So as long as you have that expectation in clear, it works out. In majority of the cases in our team, it has worked out. People are happy, they are making good money as well, and they're growing well. So yes, that definitely can be done, but then you have to be mentally prepared for that.
All right. Okay. I think we can wind up with
Oh, awesome.
that because there are a few more questions, but we have already crossed the timeline that we had decided on. So sorry everyone for going beyond the stipulated time, but we tried to cover as many questions, and I'm sure our speakers will be more than happy to connect with you all over LinkedIn and answer your queries, which we might not have addressed today.
Hmm.
Right, Chandan, Divij, so should we wrap up the session?
Oh, yes, yes. So before we close, just a quick remark. So we push out a lot of content from our brand perspective. Coditas is a very people focused company. Everything is designed around it. So please make sure that you're following us over social media, LinkedIn, Instagram. You can YouTube as well. We are trying to grow that audience as well. We push out a lot of good quality content. You get to know what we are working on, how we are growing from design angle, from tech angle, from the company culture angle. So that is also there. Second thing is we are hiring in large numbers. We are looking for good people. Please feel free to visit careers.coditas.com and apply for whatever positions that you find interested in. Share it with people that you know. If you know somebody who would be interested in that particular position, they can apply. We are definitely looking for a lot of good people to join and grow.
All right. Okay. So thank you, Chandan. Thank you, Divij, for this awesome session, and a big thank you for the audience for joining us today. As we have already mentioned, if you are interested in joining our UX design training program, email your resume to the email ID that is mentioned in the comments. And as Chandan mentioned, we are very active on all the social media channels, so do stay in touch with them. And by following us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and also do subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you are notified about our upcoming webinars. Lastly, please share your feedback for this session. Again, the link is mentioned in the comments. So thank you once again. Take care. Bye,
Sure.
Chandan.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone. Bye bye. Bye.
Bye.